as item 12 to the General Issues Committee Report 14-002. And that is that the City Solicitor and Corporate Counsel be authorized and directed to prepare all necessary bylaws for Council approval for the purpose of establishing the tax levy. Seconded by Councillor Powers. That is the motion to approve the tax budget. Standing recorded.
So, just a minute. Okay. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to remind my residents, this is the last year of the 4-year phase-in, and this was to get area rated all settled down. I always said that you would pay for the tax or the services that you received. And the biggest hit in my ward were the urban folks who were actually paying for part-time firefighters, and in fact, they were getting full-time firefighting. So they went from $69 a year to $348 a year. Big difference, and that's why we phased it in. And just to get some sort of perspective here, the rural folks have got a bit of an increase this year as well, because this is enhancing the part-time firefighters and their benefits package. So, having said that, I am supporting what's in front of us here today. It's giving our residents, especially those in Ward 11, better firefighting services, and I just want to thank the staff for helping me through all this and understanding it. I've always understood the area rating, I thought, very well, and this is just one more layer on top of that. This is the last year for this phase-in. Next year, everything will be on par. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Jackson, please.
Well, thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and I will be supporting this budget, but I stayed up last night putting some thoughts to paper in anticipation of some debate tonight with the budget. Mr. Deputy Mayor, first and foremost, huge thanks to a senior management team led by our City Manager, Chris Murray, and all SMT for the outstanding job they've done, always being available for us over the last 6 months, primarily through this 2014 budget process. And our City Clerk's Department, primarily Carolyn Biggs, for always keeping us on track, keeping copious notes and minutes, and making sure that we stayed on the roadmap regarding our agendas. So huge thank you primarily to those. Mr. Deputy Mayor, over a 4-year period, if this 1.5 average is approved tonight, it's about a 1.22% increase each year on an average over the 4 years of this term of council. I think that's something truly to celebrate. The taxes being below the rate of inflation. Thanks to Mayor Bertina, he started us this term of council with sustainability. That was the buzzword, and I think this council has been true to that. All the services, programs, facilities, enhancements, retrofits, improvements that we've done, whether it's our great library program and library services across the city, maintaining our parks, rec centers, and arenas, always making sure, Mr. Deputy Mayor, those facilities are affordable, accessible, and available to our constituents. The transit tonight, the waterfront initiatives, and the waterfront initiatives are right across the spectrum, Mr. Deputy Mayor, on the social, recreational, commercial, and environmental side. We should be very proud this term of council with the Randall Reef cleanup. That's begun, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and further investment is going to come. Red Hill Business Park and other business parks, servicing shovel-ready lands for hopefully new investment to come, airport employment growth, infrastructure, back to basics. I think more and more our constituents have said, yes, provide new opportunities for transportation across the city, primarily in the lower city, for cycling, for bike dedicated bus lanes, but overall get back to basics with the roads, sidewalks, sewer, and water mains. One, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I want to highlight, it's a small one in a $1.2 billion city budget. But this council tonight is going to approve $300,000 so that catch basins across the entire city, something like 44,000 catch basins across the entire city, instead of being cleaned once every 7 years, will be cleaned once every 2 years. And obviously, there's still more that can be done, but that's a huge increase and enhancement there. And that only took $300,000, but took a lot of discussion and debate. City Housing Hamilton, it's very important that we continue with meeting our housing needs, Mr. Deputy Mayor. We're looking after the wide demographic spectrum from seniors to young people across our city, and the quality of life has always been second to none here, Mr. Deputy Mayor. We're open for business. We've continued to support boards and agencies, maybe not to the degree they want, but we're doing our darndest to, within limited tax dollars, to support. We've got great emergency services with fire and police. I'm very proud of our workforce. Yeah, there's a hiccup or two along the way, but overall 99% do their darndest to provide good service to our taxpayers, including frontline workers and Macassa, Wentworth Lodges, QP, HSR, ATU, etc. And we're encouraging more private-public partnerships, Mr. Deputy Mayor, with the new waste-energy facility at Woodward Avenue plant. And lastly, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I think on behalf of at least the constituents I represent overwhelmingly, we're a compassionate city, great citizens. We believe in the social fabric of our community. We always want to help those that are marginalized, provide tangible support for those organizations. And lastly, we're a multicultural city, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Someone once told me over 70 languages are spoken in our city, and we need to make sure all are welcome. And I'm just very proud to support this budget here tonight, because I think it does so much for so many people across our city and provides still for further improvements down the road. Thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Any other speakers on this? Councillor Marilla?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Let me start off by saying that I think anytime we're looking at our budget, it would be remiss of us not to acknowledge the fact that 55% of our budget is out of our control. So 45% of our budget, which we do control, we're able to find efficiencies within the existing budget. And that speaks volumes with respect to how the system is really broken. So the average household in Hamilton pays $3,000 per household, which really is representative of only 2% of what people pay in taxes all year round locally. So when you look at what you pay in income tax and retail taxes and so on, the average per household is $50,000, 50. The average that comes to the city of Hamilton is $3,000. Out of that average $3,000, more than half of it, we can't even control because of downloading and other issues legislatively compounded on our backs, which really speaks volumes to the fact that we are truly, all municipalities in Ontario particularly, are the most efficient run governments of any government in Ontario. And I mean provincial, municipal, provincial, and federal. And in saying that, I think it's key to understand that the challenges that we're faced with are more to do with the downloading issues in our relationship with the province and the federal government than it is with anything that we can do. When more than half of what we decide upon we can't control, there is definitely a problem with the formula, and we need to fix that. The more we recognize that, the more pressure will be applied on upper levels of government to make the necessary changes legislatively, because the present regressive nature of our taxation is not sustainable. We will hit a dead end sooner or later. We need to get ahead of that because, frankly, although, and Councillor Ferguson mentions taxes are high, I don't think the average person in Ancaster recognizes that 55% of what they're paying in that $10,000 has nothing to do with us and everything to do with the province. So let's call it what it is. And what I see before us at 1.5, and in the East End it's much lower than that. It's, I believe, in some areas almost zero, if not in some cases in previous 10 years, an actual decrease in taxes because of the way the area rating issues or the assessment issues play a role in all of this. So in saying all of that, we need to recognize that the challenges that we're faced with, particularly from an infrastructure deficit, are those that we need to focus in on. We need to really call it and not get too occupied with the low-lying fruit, but the key issues. And the key issues at present is legislation that prevents us from being sustainable, not because we make decisions that are not sustainable, but because it's legislative that's out of our control. And when you have 55% of your operating budget out of your control, the system is broken and it needs to be fixed, and people need to understand that. So we need collectively, it'd be irresponsible of us not to educate the public, because unless the public is aware of this travesty, changes will never occur. And I want to thank this council and previous councils for ensuring that we are the best run and most efficient level of government in Canada. when you look at the reality. The fact that our credit rating is better than that of the province of Ontario truly speaks volumes. And I just want to commend everyone involved. Obviously, zero would have been better. In some cases in the East End, they are getting zero. But at the same rate, considering that the average person paying Cogeco cable, in some cases, are paying more for their cable than they are for police, ambulance, fire, snow removal, parks, and the other 258 services that we provide, I think we're doing a hell of a job. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Merlis. Speakers, list Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Pearson, and Councillor Powers. Councillor Ferguson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the 1.5%, while nobody likes increases, I think that's reasonable looking at the rate of inflation, and in particular when over 50% of our costs are salaries and wages. Over 90% of our staff are unionized, and a large chunk of those are essential service like police, fire, and EMS, where we have interest arbitration where it gets forced on us. And you know, some of them are still warning around the province, these interest arbitrators in the order of 3%. So I would like 0 too, but 1.5% is reasonable. And that's all I have to say about the budget, other than I want to thank the people across the front row. This is a grueling process, but I particularly want to thank Mike and his team behind him. The very clear way in which he presents to us, he has all the answers. He answers them all respectfully. And if he doesn't know it, he says he'll get it, and he does. I've been in his office. I think his assistant's tired of seeing me standing at his door and wondering where he is, and I'm sure other members of the council are doing the same. So I want to put a special thank you out to our finance staff, and particularly our general manager, who is no longer acting, but the real guy. He's the general manager of finance, and I call him our CFO. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Pearson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And I also just want to ask first a couple of questions that I could to you, to Mr. Zagarek. Mike, could you just clarify, what did we start off with as percentage coming into this budget process?
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, we started the budget process back in September. I know it seems so long ago, and we started at a 2.8% increase, and today Council is approving a 1.5% increase, and that represents about $53 for an average or typical household.
Correct. And what does 1% as far as dollar value equate to? So what we have to reduce the budget by in order to reduce the percentage by 1?
For you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, 1% represents about $8.2 million.
Great. Thank you very much. And I just wanted, for the public's information, I think it's imperative that the public understand that. It's simple to say here, you know, we've gone from 2.8 to 1.5, but when you recognize the millions of dollars that have to be reduced in order to achieve that process, I'm pleased today, and I've been one of the most vocal every budget that we've dealt with, because in the outlying areas we're dealing with area rating. So whatever our final number comes up to, we always have the outlying area always has the area rating percentage that has to be added on to this. So we're always, you know, the suburban areas are always encouraging that we continue to reduce, so that we reduce the percentage that our taxpayers in the outlying areas are being responsible for. So I'm very supportive of the 1.5%. Certainly would love to see it lower, but it does recognize that we have, we're continuing to commit to the infrastructure initiatives, to enhancements in the city, and moving Hamilton forward. And I think that's wonderful. And I think our taxpayers will be appreciative that, we really don't have cuts that they're going to see a visible difference tomorrow or the next day as we move throughout the year. So I know for the residents in Ward 10, with the average property assessment value, we're looking at approximately 2%. That's with the area rating, so it's about $71 on an average assessed home. And I certainly can support that. And I just want to also thank all of the department staff, Mike Zagarek, all the staff that in your department and all the departments who were involved in the budget process. Because as Mike said, this started last September. It's been a long, long process. And, it does get more difficult every year because we tighten up every year, but try and continue to be responsible. So thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Councillor Powers.
So just building on what Councillor Pearson has indicated, over this term of council, over the 4 years, our total increase impact is a mid-single-digit increase for our residents in the city. So I think that's a commendable job. And once again, I thank Mr. Murray and the leadership of all his general managers, and obviously Mike and and Rob Rosini before him kind of taking us through the budget process. But I guess the final one I want to make is I want to compliment the members that are sitting around the table here, because as Councillor Pearson alluded to, every year there's always more questions or tighter restrictions. We've gone through the service delivery review, so there's tools that are being put in place in order to reduce the cost. Not too many years ago, I recall staff coming in with a starting budget of 13.4%, which, you know, if you're my age, you would have, grabbed for your heart from that standpoint. But right now, the rules have been, the direction and the guides have been put in place by council, and the staff are aware that you might as well go back to the drawing board right from the very beginning, because we're going to send you back if it's not right. So I think collectively, the team that's been developed of the 16 of us around the table, and the senior management staff and all the people who provide the backup and deliver on those numbers should be commended. You can always hope for better, but I think the realization that Councillor Ferguson has indicated and the realities that Councillor Marula has conveyed to us, and that is, I think we're doing not too bad with what we have to work with. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Powers. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. About 7.5 years ago, I remember coming in and learning that our property tax was 17% above the provincial average, and thinking, holy smokes, that's incredible. How are we going to get this down? And both this term and last term, it's been slow, incremental change, and we're now down at, I believe it's 10 3/4 above the provincial average. So that's a significant accomplishment for an organization that has not cut services, for an organization that has not laid off. You could easily lower that number quickly by laying off a bunch of people and employees, but that impacts a whole lot of families. So instead, you have a group of staff and you have a group of councillors who have become very creative and come in and lowered our property tax numbers to the point where we're actually getting into an area that we're ahead of many communities around us, and we were not that way. When you look in the past, we were behind everybody. I mean, there wasn't a community around us that didn't have lower taxes than us. So now we're actually getting highly competitive. 2 terms in a row with the Development Charge Review Committee. Not a fun committee to sit on, lots of numbers. But those development charges have become more competitive with other communities. In the past, we were being criticized because we weren't charging the appropriate amount for a development charge. And so that has changed significantly. And all these little changes actually impact the amount of income taxes that we don't need to take from people at home. Little fanfare for Mr. Zagaric and his team when they brought in the debt policy this year. Significant document that really helps to set the path for the corporation for years to come. And there, I don't even think there was an article written about it. Like, it just went over everybody's head. And yet if you went to a corporate finance guy, that's the first thing they'd ask, well, where's your debt policy? So excellent work from our staff. And it put me to sleep 4 times. I told Jay it was twice, but it was actually 4 times going through it. But I was incredibly proud of having that document come from this council. The value for money audit that we set up, that's another huge success for the council. So, I mean, can you look at everything and say, okay, well, taxes are now 0? Well, no, we can't. But you can say that the incremental increases in taxes over time are helping to lower that average property tax bill to the point where we're now being competitive with other communities, and that's why businesses are now very interested in coming into the Hamilton area. So I am very pleased with the budget this year. I know lots of residents would prefer no increases. It's not doable. And I think we have to be realistic about it, and I think we have. I think we've done what we can to keep property taxes as low as we can and maintain our competitive strategy across the province and Canada, for that matter. So I want to thank the staff across the front. The work they do on this budget is absolutely mind-numbing. I know they're accountants and they love that. It is mind-numbing looking at those numbers over and over again, but they really do come up with some creative ways to help the council reach the goal that we set. So my hat's off to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor McCaddy.
Thanks to Mr. Deputy Mayor, and I won't repeat a lot of what's been said. It's a significant job that's been done by this council, 1.3% average over the last 4 years, and there hasn't been a council, certainly during the amalgamation time, that's come anywhere near that. So it's a substantive achievement. Should also mention, though, that our own city departmental budgets during that period of time are down in the 0.3 or 0.3%, almost down by close to 0% increases, no increases over that 4-year period, with the boards and agencies, police services board, other budgets that we have to deal with are higher, bringing it up to that 1.3% average. But the folks that sit behind us here, the general managers and the staff, have held it at almost zero for 4 years at our own city departmental budget. So that's a huge thing that they've achieved, feather in their cap, I think, for that period of time. And we've maintained services, as people have indicated, as other councils have indicated, during that period of time. We've actually added services, and the discussion tonight about transit is one of those services we've added this year, as you know. But the thing that I think we need to focus on, which we haven't been quite as successful on yet, is growing the revenues. We're talking about keeping the expenses as tight as we possibly can, 1, just over 1%. But we need to grow the revenues much more than we have in the past. And we are, in fact, investing in economic development here in Hamilton. We're adding building department staff to facilitate building permits, move things along. And I know Neil Everson and his team at ECDEV are making additional investments through our contributions here at Council to grow the assessment growth, because it's fair enough saving money, which we need to do, but we also need to bring in more revenue through tax assessment growth here in Hamilton. And we've been doing our best. We've had some hiccups on the reassessments for the old industrial properties, but I'm convinced in the next term of council we'll start to see the revenues grow here in the city, and I think there's still room for additional decreases in our spending as well. We had that KPMG report, which we haven't fully capitalized on yet, with some opportunities. I think it was about 25 items, not all of which are viable, but certainly some of them are. I know staff are working up some of those ideas into something that we can consider the next term of council, consider 2015 for additional improvements. So growing the revenues, I think, will be the focus of the 2015 council, no doubt, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And hats off to staff and to this particular council for the achievement over the last 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCaddy. Councillor Farr, please.
Through you, I won't take a lot of time. I want to give Mike Zagaric an opportunity to maybe credit some of the people that he works with. He's talking to Tom right now. I can see that. Certainly I appreciate all the comments. Councillor Jackson, quite eloquent as he is at this time of year every year, when he sums it all up and explains to all of us, or reminds all of us, all of this value-added business that goes on behalf of our taxpayers throughout the year. And I think that's important. What makes Hamilton the #1 place in which to invest has a lot to do with what is before us today. There is most definitely a tie-in because part of the attraction is mitigating those bottom line costs in terms of tax impacts. Mike, through the Deputy Mayor, specific to reserves, and then I want you to ad-lib your own thanks to the people that have assisted you in this, your first full year, I guess, pulling this off. A few years ago, we were a little concerned about reliance on reserves, but you've also somehow, through this budget, managed to address that concern. Can you explain how, and then take a minute to thank people through you? And I'm through.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I want to thank Councillor Farr for the question, because often the impact that this budget has had versus previous budgets with respect to financial planning is lost in our presentations. Often we focus on the services we provide, and they're most familiar to our citizens and our users. But in terms of the 2014 budget, it does represent an improvement with respect to financial planning. It represents approximately $6 million in investments to improve the city's financial position and reduce our risks, for instance, having year-end deficits going forward. And some examples of those improved practices include a lower reliance on reserves, whether it's our tax stabilization reserve or some of our program reserves, such as in planning and economic development. It also involves providing the appropriate level of funding through the budget for programs that have previously been chronically underfunded. With, for example, risk management, you'll recall that in previous presentations we've identified the fact that risk management costs typically are coming in at in excess of $2 million, and it has been an underfunded, chronically underfunded program, and the 2014 budget sets out to amend that and improve the financial position while reducing the risk of year-end unfavorable variances or deficits. I want to recognize Council. I know there's been a number of references with respect to the tax increase over this term of Council, and 1.3% has been, when we look at our comparator groups, on the low end of our comparator group. And where we see that translated in terms of affordability, as you may recall, near the end of January, we provided you some sense of the outcome of that focus. In 2008, the local tax burden relative to income was approximately 6%. By 2012, that's dropped to approximately 4.8%. So I just want to recognize the efforts of Council in terms of reducing that tax burden, recognizing the challenges this community has with respect to income relative to our comparator groups. But at the same time, again, I don't want to lose the fact that not only has Council been focused on reducing the tax burden, you've preserved service levels, and you've improved the financial position of the corporation, especially through the 2014 budget. Beyond those actions, the 2014 budget enhances our transit service levels, our ambulance services, increases the financial assistance to adult day programs, increases stormwater management, provides an additional $1.3 million to winter control, and we know how important our winter control budget is after the winter we just experienced. It supports our capital program. In 2014, our capital program, tax-supported capital program, is approximately $290 million. We know how important our capital investments are, given that we have an infrastructure deficit of approximately $195 million annually. It also includes a $1 million reduction in the level of subsidy to our entertainment facilities previously operated by HECFI. So again, in terms of some of the actions of this term of Council, I just wanted to highlight some of those actions and how they translate into that 1.5% tax impact. I want to recognize staff in general, not only our senior management team, but staff in general. As Councillor McCaddy pointed out, over this term of Council, the departments have come in with an average tax increase of 0.1%. I'm not familiar with a lot of local government departments that have been able to achieve that while preserving services and service levels. So I want to recognize the innovation and the creativity of staff of trying to preserve our service levels and services for our citizens while trying to maintain that tax burden to our local citizens. So, in addition to senior management team, I think it's important to recognize all our staff who have input into our budget process and who work diligently, starting in the months of the summer months as early as June and July, in developing our budget to the point where we are tonight, where, again, council is approving a competitive tax increase. Again, I know it's a challenge for council to try to balance the tax burden while trying to preserve service levels and manage our financial position. But I do want to point out that I think this is a very competitive tax increase. Again, you are preserving service levels, and improving the financial position of the corporation. Thank you.
Councillor Farr? Good to go, okay. Councillor Collins, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and I didn't want to let the opportunity pass without saying thanks as well to staff and my council colleagues for a very productive budget process, both on the capital and the operating side of things. And not really a year passes as we go through the budget that we don't learn something new. And I think what came to, to light this budget more than others is that, unfortunately, we've increasingly become reliant on residential growth. I know that's been a theme for us in terms of looking at increasing our commercial and industrial tax base. But one theme I think that resonated throughout the budget process is that our current increase that we've seen, the new taxes coming into the municipality, have been driven by the growth in both Flamborough and in Glanbrook. And that should be concerning for us, because we know that low interest rates aren't going to last forever. We know that our real estate market isn't going to remain as hot as it is for many more years. And so at some point in time, that growth will slow. And if we don't see some increased commercial and industrial assessment growth, that 0.8 number, which really is middle of the pack in Ontario, I know that we have record building numbers and we see a lot of development downtown, and that's all tremendous. That's terrific, and our staff and our council should be congratulated for that, no doubt about it. But we're still in the middle of the pack in terms of true assessment gains. We're at 0.8%. And so we can't continue to rely on our residential new home builds for new tax growth in this municipality. So I want to thank Mike and his staff for being as blunt as they were through the budget process. So for as much as we've accomplished a great deal, we've made tremendous progress, as many of my colleagues have stated around the table, we still have a lot of work to do. And it's not just some minor tinkering. We have a revenue problem, as Councillor McHattie noted. On the expenditure side of the equation, we're constantly benchmarking ourselves, our corporation, against other municipalities, and we've done quite well in that regard. On the revenue side of things, though, we're hurting. And I want to thank Mike and his staff, especially Larry Friday and his group, for highlighting that fact and illustrating to us that there's still a lot of room for improvement, and that all goes back to our strategic plan, of which Mr. Murray and SMT have done a tremendous job with. So certainly want to thank all of those who've played a very productive role in where we are today to get us to this point. But as we all know, there's still a lot of work to be done, and I'm certainly very thankful of staff for providing as much information as they did through the budget process.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Nobody else? Councillor Partridge, did you have your hand up before or not? No? Okay, Mayor Bertina, please.
Yeah, it's a really great day for us, and at the end of a great term, and the last budget of the current term. And the numbers have all been stated, and they're really terrific. I do want to emphasize, though, and Laura Fontana's not here tonight, but when we set out to get our union agreements, and I suggested to the city manager that we use this positioning statement: fair compensation, no loss of service, zero impact on taxes. And our unionized workers came in at 0, 1.9, 1.9, 1.9. And this was a really great accomplishment, especially when we're talking about the taxation level, because this is going to be a problem, I think, for subsequent councils and mayors, is dealing with our unionized employees. They've been through some tough stuff, and they can't be that happy right now with some of the things that have been published about them, because I really have a lot of confidence and pride. In fact, I was standing in the middle of Barton Street waiting for traffic to go by, and some guy waved me over, and he's a city worker, sanitation, and he said, "Thanks to you and council for standing up for us in that media coverage." So that's the one thing that needs to be emphasized. And as Councillor Jackson referred to, in terms of the overall budgeting process, it's zero sustainable. Zero, as close to zero as we can keep the taxes. Sustainable, meaning we continue to provide the services. But more than that, when you figure it all out and the numbers look good and the percentage of household income for taxes, as Mike Zagaric pointed out, has gone down from something like 6 to something like 4.8. So we are getting more affordable in those terms. But so much other good work has gone on, and Joanne Pryle's department, Dr. Richardson's department, improving the quality of life of our citizens. City housing, the improvements. City housing was a real mess when I came on the council 10 years ago, and we're vastly better than we were. So it's not just a matter of the money. It's are we bringing the quality of life of our citizens, all of our citizens, to a higher level? And the evidence is absolutely there. It's clear. Even the median household income in Hamilton is in the mid-80,000s now, and I think it was 10,000 lower. We're way ahead of cities like Toronto, Montreal. We've got so much to be proud of. I just want to finish by saying that I try to lead by example, and the legislative budget will show that the mayor's office there's a 31% positive variance. And so over the 4-year term, I've been able to operate the office. I can look out the window and see some of the great things that have happened and all of the successes of our office in working with other governments, getting funding, and so on. And over that period of time, we saved to the taxpayer $1.5 or so million on the mayor's office budget alone. And I'm proud of that because we're hardworking people in Hamilton. We want to look after the nickels and dimes as well as the millions. And so I think we as a council can take pride in the fact that we have moved the city into a different place, and I can only anticipate greater things in the future with the caveat that debt and union agreements may pose problems for the next term. Those are my comments. And to everyone sitting up along the staff wall there, thank you so much for all you've done to get us to where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bettina. And if you would take the chair, please, I could speak. Thank you. Well, I had a difficult time with this budget. Flamborough, Ward 14, the largest ward in the city, all rural, no urban part of it. And still the amalgamation continues out there, and there's a few people, that are still opposed to the amalgamation and keep saying they're paying all these taxes and getting nothing, no services. And I've been fortunate enough to the majority of the people, I explained to them what they are getting for services. There's services they don't see. The building department, the health department, planning department, we go on and on. This past winter was a good example of how well our roads were taken care of. I had lots of good comments, the long hours, the good job keeping our roads clean. So that's okay. But part of the problem is, and it happens in the city too, but in the rural area, very few areas have natural gas. This winter, a lot of places and the farms and the rural homes are on propane. And the propane is more than doubled. I can tell you from 65 cents to $1.30 I was paying for my shop and on the farm. So those costs. Hydro has gone up exponentially. A lot of damage has been done to a lot of properties out there, and they're going to be a long time paying to clean that up, damaged homes and that weren't covered by insurance and equipment sheds. So there's all of this that just keeps adding up and adding up. And as a business person, and Councillor Ferguson is in business and understands that all of our costs keep going up. We try to shave, no different than staff have done here and the councillors around this table. And I'm going to pay a particular comment here to Councillor Collins, has a very sharp pencil, and keeps going over the budget books and going over them. And I'm impressed by Councillor Collins and his work on this, and every one of you who contribute to it, doing a good job on it. I guess I'm getting hammered on a few things about fire out there. And I have a portion of Ancaster, my ward, that comes from Governor's Road to 403, and that's covered by urban fire in a rural area. And it's based on a mapping and distances. And we have full-time firefighters coming in the daytime. So whether it's for fire accidents, the firefighters show up. And I understand that and I respect that. And in fact, I had a meeting this morning, a long meeting with Mike Zagaric and Chief Rob Simons on it, and we explained it all. And I've had previous meetings with Mike too, going over the budget and the fire and items like that. So I have a good understanding of that. We do get recreation out there. I've had a lot of road work done since I've come here in my time, and including this year and this coming year is going to be a lot of road work done. I have a lot of roads that need to be covered. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of phone calls, we all are, on the roads that are damaged and the ripples in the roads. A lot of that will settle out as far as that. But we've got a lot of work done. We've done a lot of stuff this past year and looking forward to stuff this year. So difficult as it is, I'm going to support this. I support my colleagues and the staff and the work they have done. And if I need to explain to my residents out there, I don't like calling them constituents, they're my residents, my people, that I will be able to explain to them. But I do, I run a business, I got 2 homes, kids got 2 homes in Dundas, one has one on Hamilton Mountain. We live in the community, born and raised in the community, we're part of it. So let's work with this and move forward. But my levy's a little higher, but I'm willing to accept that and move forward. So I will be supporting the budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Take the chair
Take
back.
the chair back.
I have a motion on the...
So, okay, Mayor Bettina, your motion, please.
Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Judy Partridge, that the second report, the budget report of the General Issues Committee be adopted as amended and the information section received. As amended.
Yes, standing recorded vote. Councillor Jackson, okay, standing recorded vote, please. All those in favor?
Mayor Bettina.
So order, please. Order, please. Carolyn, please.
Mayor Bettina, Deputy Mayor Pasuda, Councillors Clark, Pearson, Johnson, Ferguson, Powers, Partridge, Jackson, Collins, Marula, Farr, and McCaddy.
And any opposed? Seeing none. Standing recorded vote, full house. Okay. Mayor Bettina, I have on my down here, may I have a motion on the report as amended? You just gave it to me. Okay, sir. We're done. Planning Committee presents